Testing, 1, 2, 3. We're back, and we're glad that you're back. Join us as we take a look back on Backlook Cinema, the podcast. I'm your host, Zo, that's Z-O or Z-O, if you're cinema fans overseas. Cinema fans. You know what? I'm getting it out. I can say the word cinema. It's the name of the podcast, Backlook Cinema, the podcast. It is the 87th episode. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. We're going to talk about and take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, which we all loved from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And if you would like to help us out and spend a little bit of your support and time, if you like this show, then please help us out. Spread the words on social media. Tell your friends, your family, and your loved ones about Backlook Cinema, the podcast. And you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. You can find the details in the show notes. This is a special episode where I'm going to take a look back at a movie that I have never seen before. This is something new. This is unprecedented. And I'm being guided on this journey by my very special guest that we have here today. Our next guest. Hold on a second. Hold on. Before I go on to talk about our next guest, I have to acknowledge that the notes that I made regarding our next guest is in a different folder. It's like hiding somewhere else. I was like, where did I put the notes on my next guest? And I have found it. So our next guest is excited about fantasy, drama, and comics. With her unique poise and gentle humor, she invites guests that she tolerates to talk about the things that she loves. Her show is fun, it's thoughtful, and if you're not listening to it, you should. I bring you the host of my streaming bubble, Jenn.
Oh.
Jenn, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. I'm super excited about this. And I appreciate the intro that you had there for me. Unique poise, I think you said.
Yeah.
I like that. Unique. I'm very unique. So.
Yeah, I am running out of adjectives. And then my notes are all mixed up. It's like, oh my God, where my notes go? And I was like, okay, I'll figure this out. I can think on the fly. It's like when a comedian when their joke doesn't land just as well, right? But they know how to roll off they know how to they know how to recover from that.
Yes.
It's
yes.
like, don't worry, I got this. I got more jokes. So anyway, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing very well. It's a little on the early side for me, but that's okay. I've got my coffee and I'm here. I made it. I was on time for class. So, and I'm really excited to be here today and to talk about this movie. And I love that you haven't seen it before, so this is kind of exciting. So,
yes,
yay!
And I'm excited to talk to you about it. I'm glad you decided to show up for the show. I'm glad that you accepted the invitation. And I was like, oh yes, I got one. So and I love listening to your podcast. You're such a fun person to listen to. And I feel like you like a lot of the same things I like. Your last episode was, or the last episode I listened to was the one where you guys were basically comparing all of the Jokers from DC Comics as far as the actors who played them, your favorite portrayals. That was a pretty neat episode.
Oh, thank you. Those are a lot of fun to do. I've been really enjoying my tolerables, Laura and Eric, were kind of going through a bunch of the DC characters. And so that's been a lot of fun. And it just, as someone who didn't grow up reading comics, it just kind of gives me a greater appreciation for these characters and kind of where they originated on paper. And then how that has translated and reached that larger audience from screen. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the Joker episode. I didn't enjoy the Joker movies so much, but I had a lot of fun talking about it, though.
Yeah. So. For me, the Joker movie was okay, except for the fact that it did not feel like it was in reference to the Joker. Like when it gets it, if it wasn't called the Joker, then would as many people see it? And I'm like, no, of course not. It's like they just used the name in order to garner an audience. It's like, oh, people are like, oh, this is a superhero movie, so let me go and watch it. And I guess you could say, I mean, yeah, it could be, but at the same time, it's like it could have been anything, right? It could have been any movie. And a lot of professional critics, they say it was more of a it derived a lot from earlier movies. I think one of them was called The Comedian, and then or something like that. And then there was another show, I guess Taxi Driver, that it said it was a derivative from. So I'm like, well, I haven't seen any of those movies, but yeah, I can see what their point is, right?
Yep. So it's a very well made movie. I just didn't like how they were trying to connect the mental illness to essentially the Joker, and I was like, that's just not my personal preference. I just kind of like the idea of just someone completely unhinged,
right? Well,
and not unhinged because of mental illness or anything like that. So
I can understand. Yeah, I can understand how people would feel that way. But traditionally, the Joker is criminally insane. Like, he doesn't go to regular jail; he goes to Arkham Asylum. He is like a judge has looked at him as like, we understand that you are not responsible for your crimes, so we're going to put you in a mental institution so that you can get help. And unfortunately, that place is Arkham Asylum. So the Joker's traditionally a crazy person, insane, mentally ill, or whatever makes people feel comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Because some people's like, I don't want you to say crazy anymore. It's like, oh, I'm running out of words, people.
Right.
The Joker is not right in the head, and he does very bad things. I don't.
There
but
you go.
I think what the movie is trying to do, it's not trying to say that he is doing bad things because of his mental illness. It's because of the societal pressures that are around him, and it's just that the mental illness does not make it easy for him to deal with those pressures, and the system that's supposed to assist him with his mental illness has failed to help him, because this is around the 1970s and early 80s, and I think maybe it is the early 80s, and in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was president, he basically shut down a lot of mental institutions by withdrawing government support, right? So now what are you supposed to do with these people who have mental problems and they need help? A lot of them end up on the street, right? So it's like, and most of them are harmless. It's just that the Joker's not one of those people, right?
Right, exactly.
He's not a harmless person. I remember I was listening to, there was a Batman tape that I listened to that when I was younger, and I listened to this tape over and over again, and I was surprised because I actually heard it in one of Eminem's albums. He used a snippet of that audio. So it was Batman who was suggesting that maybe the Joker could use a frontal lobotomy. And I'm like, whoa, Batman is extreme.
Batman. And I just noticed your Batman hat, which is very cool.
Oh, thank you. I just picked it up the other day. Is the newest one in my collection.
Very nice.
I was like, I wasn't going to buy it, but I was like, but it's a new bat symbol. Come on.
Yeah, you gotta have it.
So, let me ask you some totally obvious questions so that our audience can get to know you better. My audience knows that I am not the grand interviewer. This is not. What's that one with the actor studio? This is not. It's not that.
Oh, yeah.
we're going for the totally obvious question. So my first obvious question is, so what were your other ideas for podcasts?
For like my show, I didn't have any other ideas. It just all kind of came up in conversation at work one day. I was actually talking with my boss, and it kind of got on the subject, and he's like, well, what would you do if you didn't have to come into work right now? Because I was really, really hating my job at the time. And my boss was amazing. And so we were just kind of talking about it one day, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I think I'm maybe start a podcast. And he's like, oh, well, what would it be about? And I'm like, well, since I'm always getting in trouble for talking about my shows at work, I guess that's what we would base the show off of. And from there, I talked to another buddy of mine who had been kind of into podcasts for a while, and I think he'd already was starting his golf-based podcast. So talking with him and kind of bouncing around some ideas and just kind of, he's like, well, what would you call it then if that's what you would want to do your podcast about? And I was like, and it just kind of, because I have always said, like, when the kids are in bed and it's my time, nice and quiet in the house to watch TV, that's when I'm in my streaming bubble, because it's just me, my streaming services, no commercials, because I will pay to not have commercials, dang it. And it just kind of snowballed all from there. So I was like, yeah, I talk about the shows that I love with people I tolerate, which is how I've always referred to my friends.
That's pretty awesome. I love that. That was one of the things that attracted me to your show, is that, because there are some people I just tolerate too.
Yep.
And that point about like paying for services so that you don't have to see commercials, I feel you. I mean, even though we run ads on this show, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I ended up, when YouTube started getting gnarly with their ads, it's like you're watching a show and all of a sudden it just breaks into ads. It's like, well, I guess I'm paying for this now. Well, actually, yep. I was going to end up paying for it anyway, because at the time they had Google Music or Google Play Music, which is far superior than YouTube Music. And I hate the fact that they took it away from me. But so they had YouTube Music, and that subscription included YouTube. So I had no problem with that. And then they switched over. So you're paying for YouTube, which includes YouTube Music. So I was going to end up paying for it anyway, because I had to pay for one of these music services, because I was spending like $20 or $30 a week on new albums. I was like, not a week, but a month. So it's like, if I'm already spending $15 a month or $30 a month on albums, I might as well, because I was resisting it for a long time. And I was like, well, I might as well pay for a streaming service so I don't have to buy any more albums. So since then, I've curtailed my album purchases quite a lot.
Now you just get the ones that you really, really, really need.
Either those or the ones that for some reason don't appear on streaming services, or that were taken off. Like, especially there are some old albums where there's a rights issue and they've taken those albums off of the streaming services. Like, oh, well, that's messed up.
Yeah.
What was the other thing? Oh, Paramount Plus is another one that I'm paying for, because you can get that one for free. But I got tired of watching commercials and then when like Strange New Worlds came out, I was like, well, that's it for me. And it was weird watching Star Trek without commercials, but I got used to it real quick.
Yeah. Paramount Plus is one we don't have yet. So, because I'll have to sign up for AMC Plus so I can try and finish The Walking Dead, stay current on that, because I'm gonna see that thing through to the end. I want to watch it die.
Right.
And I say that with all the love in the world, because I've been watching this show since like day one. I've got a bunch of Walking Dead stuff. But so when we're done with Walking Dead on AMC, then I think I'll sign up for the Paramount Plus, because I haven't seen any of the new Star Treks yet.
Right.
And any of them, from Picard to Lower Decks or Strange New Worlds. And we watch a lot of Next Generation on Pluto, because they just have a Next Gen channel. So that's on like almost constantly. And I love it. But when you watch it as much as we do, we see episodes repeating throughout the week. And so I'm just kind of like, I'd rather be able to just pick which ones I want, start in a season or something, and work my way through. So that's kind of the plan for now. But I've got to... I can't sign up for all of them all at once. So as much as I'd want to.
Right.
So I'm trying to limit myself and be a responsible adult.
Well, I'm 90% sure that Paramount has a free tier. It's just that you have to deal with the commercials. So if you don't mind the commercials, you can kind of get started early on the Star Trek journey. And I guess you've been warned about, Discovery, and you've probably been warned about Picard. Probably not going to have the same love for it. You're going to see some changes that might not be, you might not find aesthetically pleasing, but they're okay. I like them for what they were. And then Discovery in particular gets a lot better in the late, when it does a time shift. So it gets a lot better after the time shift.
Okay.
And then, they do some things with Spock. I guess, like the general story about Spock and Discovery.
I don't know.
Okay, I won't.
I don't think so. It's
not really a spoiler, because this is part of the story. So basically, the main character, Michael Burnham, is Spock's secret sister. So the funny, and she's not a natural sister, somebody that Sarek and his mother had adopted. So the thing about this is Spock has a lot of secret siblings, and I'm just waiting for him to come out with a secret son. So when he do Spock's secret son or secret daughter, it could be either one, secret non-binary. I'm all for it. So you're familiar with Star Trek 2, obviously. No, Star Trek 3.
A bit. I've only been just like a next gen gal and just the series, never really got too into the movies. So I always feel weird to say that I'm a Star Trek fan because I only really like Next Generation, and I will tolerate Voyager because when we first cut cable, it was one of the few things on that I could actually sit and watch. So I became very familiar with those characters and everything. But that's really kind of it. I didn't get into anything else. I do like the newer Star Trek movies with the very handsome Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and John Cho and everybody. Those were a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed that. But that's kind of it for my Trekkiness.
Well, it's a lot of Trek out there.
It's a lot of Trek.
No, it would be criminal to, especially since you're a younger person, it would be criminal to require you to watch all of Trek because there's so much out of it. I mean, it's Enterprise, there's the original series, there's Deep Space Nine. It's a lot. And then all this new Trek is more Trek than we had in decades, right?
I know.
So, as far as the movies, like the older movies, you can skip Star Trek 1, even though they just did a remaster. You can skip Star Trek the motion picture. I mean, unless you're really into like slow sludge crawling type of narrative. If you liked 2001: A Space Odyssey, then you will be able to enjoy Star Trek the motion picture. But you can skip it. You don't really need it. Star Trek 2 is like required viewing for all Trekkies. You kind of have to watch that to certify your Trekkiness. And then Star Trek 3, you'll find out, you will see what I'm talking about when I say Spock's secret son when you watch Star Trek 3. Star Trek 3 is a direct sequel to Star Trek 2, and it's good. It's not like they say like the odd number Treks are the worst Treks, but in this case, Star Trek 3, I feel doesn't really fall into that. So and Star Trek 3 is like a sequel to Star Trek 2, so that's pretty fun to watch. And then Star Trek 4 is one of the best in the series. And you can skip Star Trek 5, don't do it. And then Star Trek 6, the Undiscovered Country, that's another one of the best Star Trek movies. Yeah, Star Trek 5 was directed by William Shatner, and he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't think he's directed anything since. It's like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not built for this, son. Yeah, so...
right on. Well, maybe we'll do like a mini Star Trek-a-thon this afternoon. We got a sick little one. He's on the mend, but he's still he's a very energetic kid. So when he's sick, you can tell. So he's still kind of just camping out on the couch. Maybe we'll make him watch Star Trek this afternoon.
Yeah, Star Trek 2 is something that you'll love. As a matter of fact, you'll see Ricardo Montalban. That's his real chest. I want you to know that.
Oh, that's right.
Right away.
Yes.
It's his actual chest. He's just a fit man. And
yeah.
People are jealous. So moving on to the next question. Did you accidentally invite guests that you couldn't quite tolerate?
No, I have not, at least not as of yet. I get very kind of like shy and nervous when trying to reach out to like strangers. So it just started with just close friends that were comfortable with wanting to be on the podcast. My little brother, he's out in Portland, so it's kind of a nice way for us to sit and like visit and, chit chat and all that fun sibling stuff. So I haven't really done a lot of, I guess, recruitment in any way, but if I've had other podcasts reach out to me, which is awesome. So then I try to return the favor and then invite them to be on my podcast. And so far, everything has worked out. So I haven't really had any kind of issues or regrets or anything like that, or struggled to tolerate anybody as of yet. No.
So I spent some time as an Uber driver, and you spend a lot of time tolerating.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've done a lot of customer service, so I feel like that's where my like strength in tolerating people comes from.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So are there any shows or movies that you do just for yourself that you don't share with anybody? Or are you just are you sharing everything?
At first, there were just kind of like my shows or maybe the shows my husband and I watch with no plans to do an episode or anything like that. But there's been a few that I have since watched. And that's kind of in this last year, I've kind of started doing mini bubbles, minisodes. So where it's just me. And I did one on the series, on the series finale for Killing Eve because it just pissed me off and I was really mad about it. So I had to rant about that one for a bit. And I realized that those were just kind of fun. They go pretty fast, or since it's just me and I can edit as I go. I was like, oh, I kind of like this process. So I've started incorporating more minisodes, and but nothing really where it's specific to a show. I'll talk about maybe a handful of shows that I have watched that I don't have plans to cover as a full episode. But just because it's covered on a minisode, I'm open to going more in depth with a guest for a full episode if anyone's ever interested. So I've got a couple where, yeah, it's just, oh, I've been watching this and these are kind of my quick thoughts about it, and maybe cover a couple of shows that way and try to keep it still under an hour.
Okay.
So,
now, speaking of doing episodes, have you, because you talked about your mini shows and the shows that you're watching, I know you like comics, so tell me that you've been watching She-Hulk. Attorney at Law.
Yes, we haven't watched. I watched the first episode with my oldest, and I loved it. And I was kind of watching him, and he's smiling and laughing throughout. So it's just a really fun watch. I think it's something that if your kids are Marvel fans, they can totally get into it as well. We haven't watched the second episode yet, but I'm hoping to maybe get that in this afternoon. But that was one where I thought maybe I'll just do like a minisode and cover each episode as the season goes on, because I was really into it. Like when I watched the trailer, I was like, oh yeah, Marvel, She-Hulk. Didn't know a lot about like the backstory of the character or anything, but I'm like, yeah, it looks good. I'll watch it. Watch the first episode, and I was like, oh my, I'm just so much more pumped for the rest of the season now. So it was a strong, solid start. The haters can die hating. I don't care. And it's like, I see all these dumb memes about it and everything. And then because I'm masochistic, and I'll go in and I'll read the comments, but there's still a lot of support for the show within the comments.
Right.
So I'm like, is this a situation where it's just a very small, like a minority of very loud people that just can't let it go? Because I feel like maybe that's what it is. But either way, it's a great show. I've been totally digging it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. A small minority of people. Because She-Hulk has been a popular character in comics for a very long time, and they're specifically drawing from some of her most popular stories. So I don't get what the hatred is. It's just it's like, wow, the what do you call it? The patriarchy is real, and it's like whenever it rears its ugly head, it gets hard, and it's like. She-Hulk, the show is leaning hard into feminism. And then in the second show in particular, she says this one line that is particularly, it leans hard on the struggles of trying to be a woman in a male dominated world. And then I'm like, oh yeah, there are a lot of people that's going to love that. So you're really going to like the second episode. With the comics, are you reading comics now? You haven't read them when you were growing up, but what about now?
I have since with a lot of these shows that I watch that are based on comics, I've gone back and have started reading several of them. So I've read all of the Umbrella Academy. I've read several of The Boys, and I got up to just about Herogasm. So within the books, let's see. I read the first book for Miss Marvel after watching the series. And so just based on the first book compared to the series, I thought they did a very, very good job. Let's see. I started reading Paper Girls, and so I want to try and read a few of the books before I start that show, because that show looks really, really good. And the first book was really, really good. And I kind of like what they're giving us so far there. Let's see. What else have I read? Let's see. I picked up... I think that's more or less it. It's just kind of here and there, whatever stuff. If I'm like, oh yes, I like this. Oh, I did read some of the Sandman books, and then I listened to the audio book on Audible with that full cast with James McAvoy and everyone. Oh, it's so good. And I did that before I watched the show. And the show is amazing. I think the show does such a great job just kind of bringing that world on paper to life. And the Tom, I can't remember his last name, who was cast as Dream. He's Dream. He is the endless. He just, I don't know how Neil did it. He made that character come to life, and he created this whole ass person and named him Tom so he could star in his show, The Sandman. So yeah, so I've some here and there. My oldest son has been reading comics kind of here and there, like a lot of the Sonic stuff. He's reading Attack on Titan. So he's gotten into the mangas right now, and he's watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. So I'm like, well, maybe when you're done with the show, you'll start reading those books too. So even though I didn't grow up reading comics, I'm trying to make sure my kids know that, like, you read whatever you want. They have access, digital libraries and everything. So we're trying to make sure that it's just all brought in and embraced. So I've been trying to, so I read a few as I go along. I'm kind of more of I'll watch it first and then maybe I'll read it. So I'm kind of the reverse of most folks, but I feel like that kind of keeps me from maybe becoming one of those people that's like, oh, this is what they changed and I don't like it.
Right.
I don't want that to happen. So I'm like, we'll just do the reverse. But so I've enjoyed them.
Here's what I want to suggest. It's a comic that I'm starting to I'm rereading from, because I don't remember where I left off. But I'm starting. It's like, how you start to read something and you hadn't read it in a while, so you like back up a couple of chapters and start reading again. So that's the rereading that I'm doing, so I can get to the part that I hadn't reached yet. So let me suggest a book called Saga. I guess you're are you using like Comixology or something like that?
Just local library.
Oh, okay. You could probably find it in the library.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard. It's fantasy. It's like space fantasy. It's like, so it's like with there aren't any elves or dragons or anything like that, but there are characters that are akin to elves and stuff. So, but they're all aliens. So if you can imagine like a fantasy but in outer space, that's what this book is about. And so it's basically a Romeo and Juliet story, that these two characters whose species are at war with each other, they fall in love and they have a child, and they're hunted because they are not supposed to be together. So the governments of their species are hunting them down. So at least that is the part of the book where I'm at. So
okay,
I think
that sounds interesting.
I think that you will enjoy it immensely. It's called Saga, Saga. I forgot who wrote it, but yeah, you should. The artwork is amazing there, and the story is just engrossing. Right? You get in and you don't want to leave. So yeah, go check
perfect.
that out.
Yeah, right on. I wrote it down, so I'll remember. Because if I don't write it down,
right? If you don't write it down, it's
then what?
It's happened? In the wind.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you for doing this interview with me. I just want to, I don't know what podcast you're listening to, but there's a podcast I'm listening to called the Made for TV Movie Podcast. I'm going to play a clip for them now. So I want my audience to hear Made for TV Movie Podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Beth.
And I'm Kirsten, and we are the hosts of the Made for TV Movie Club podcast. Beth, we've been friends for a long time.
We sure have, Kay, since before Rachel kissed Ross for the first time.
It's true, and since we share a love of all things TV, we decided to team up to review our favorite TV movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
You don't need to watch the movie. We did that for you.
You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Deezer, and iHeartRadio.
And find us on our socials.
Join us in our Facebook group, Made for TV Movie Club Podcast. Follow us on Insta at made_for_TV_movie_club. Tweet us at TV Movie Club Pod 1.
Or give us a Goog at #TVMC Podcast, and you'll find us.
We'll see you soon in the clubhouse.
And we're back. Thank you for joining us. Oh, just in case there was a problem with the audio. So in case you didn't hear at the very end, they were saying that you can give them a Goog at #MFTVMC podcast, and you can find them on Google that way. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And we're about to check out a movie that I now know why is considered one of the best movies in the game. And that movie is Fargo. Jen, please tell us a little bit about Fargo.
Okay. This is where I start reading, right?
Yeah, this is it.
Okay.
You're on.
I just wanted to make sure. You can cut
Lights,
that
camera,
if
action.
you'd like. It's early for me. Okay, no. All right. So, a Minnesota car salesman, Jerry Lundegaard's inept crime falls apart due to his and his henchmen's bungling and the persistent police work of the quite pregnant Marge Gunderson.
Yeah, and that's from IMDb. And I was like, oh, that's short. Because I didn't know how to write this. And sometimes I'll write it myself. And then sometimes I'll just, what does IMDb say about this? And I was like, wow, that's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Same here. If I can't come up with something clever and witty, I'll just pull from IMDb because it's just, it's
it's right there.
Quick and to the point.
It's an excellent resource. So this movie was released on April 5th, 1996, produced by Polygram Filmed Entertainment and Working Title Films. It grossed over $24 million in the U.S. and Canada and $60 million worldwide on a $7 million budget to rave reviews. This is one of the best movies that I've talked about on the podcast so far. This movie is just universally loved. So tell us who's starring in this movie?
Well, we have the brilliant William H. Macy playing Jerry Lundegaard, and folks might remember him from a whole bunch of stuff, but like maybe Magnolia, Boogie Nights, Cellular, or The Last Dragon.
Yes, The Last Dragon was one of his first appearances. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it moment. But even in that tiny scrap of film that you see him in, you can look at him and say, this guy's a genius.
Mm-hmm. He really is.
One of the movies that I always like to include movies that I've actually seen actors in, because I haven't seen Magnolia, but I did forget that he was in what's that superhero movie called? I forgot. It's a superhero movie that he's in, and he's hilarious. He plays a character called the Shoveler because he carries...
Mystery Men.
Yes,
Mystery Men with
Mystery
Ben
Men.
Stiller.
Yes, with Ben Stiller.
Janine Garofalo. That movie is hilarious.
I love that movie. He says, I shovel, and I shovel well, right there. He takes that role so seriously. It's amazing. And then in this movie, he's like a totally different person. I was like, oh my God, he's like transformed. But it's almost like you're cheating when you can do different accents, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the next actor is Frances McDormand. She plays Marge Gunderson. She was in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Almost Famous, and I thought I put something else. But yeah, those are 2 of the movies that she's in. And she was fascinating in this movie. She
is.
Kind of reminded me of Columbo.
A little bit.
Yes.
A little bit, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. She didn't actually say, let me ask you one more question, but she got that look on her face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she did. Let's see. There's also the brilliant Steve Buscemi, plays Carl Showalter, and he's been in Ghost World, Reservoir Dogs, Armageddon, just to name a few of, I'm sure, his very impressive IMDb filmography.
Right.
I love him. He's one of my favorites.
Right. He tends to play like the smart aleck type of character, right? Except in Armageddon, where he played a total... not Armageddon. There was a different one I'm trying to think. No, it was the one with Nicolas Cage, Con Air. Mm-hmm. Total creep. creepazoid.
Oh, total creep. Yeah. Oh, God. And I love that movie. And I listened to your Con Air episode. So it's funny that you brought that one up. And I listened to your Short Circuit episode as well. And both amazing. And I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks for listening. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Rate, review, and subscribe.
That's right.
So up next is Peter. Oh, I did not practice this pronunciation, so I'm going to give it a go. Peter Stormare. He played. Oh, and this is even a worse name because I didn't quite get the name when they mentioned it on the movie. But I think it's Geir Grinswald. Does that sound right to you?
I think so. I tried to pick up on it when I did my rewatch. And even with like the closed captioning, I think they only ever identified him by his last name.
Right.
Yeah. So I never got the actual pronunciation of the first name. So I was like, well, I'm just going to call him the Big Swede. I don't care.
So Geir Grimsrud, and he's been in the Brothers Grimm and Constantine. And you know what? There are some times when I'm watching a movie and I recognize a guy. So I recognized him. I didn't know his name, but I recognized him, and it bothered me. And it was to the point where I had a hard time enjoying the film because, like, I need to know who that guy is. Who is that guy? And finally, after the movie was over, I remembered that he was in American Gods. Did you see that one?
No, I have not seen that one yet.
So American Gods is is a novel written by Neil Gaiman, who also wrote The Sandman. So in this one, he's basically the gods are alive. They're in America. I highly recommend it, especially the audiobook. So in there, so the ancient gods, their life requires people to worship them. So they get weaker as people worship them less. So somebody like Jesus Christ, he's massive. Like he's a massive figure in the supernatural community. But somebody like Odin or Thor, they're small and they're weak, and they're trying to bring about an age when people worship the gods again so they can gain more power. So Peter plays Cinnabog, as I think it's a god from like the Caucasian region, that Middle Eastern region, and basically he's kind of the god of death. People don't really know that much about how he was worshipped, but he's pretty gnarly in American Gods.
Right on. Yeah, he's definitely one of those. Oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
So I kind of had the same thing, and I had to look him up right away because I'm like, this is gonna bother me, and then I'm like, yep, classic. Of that guy.
right, absolutely.
All right. Well, we also have Kristen Rudrud. I'm so
Sounds
sorry.
good to me.
And she plays Jean Lundegaard, and she has been in movies like Drop Dead Gorgeous, Pleasantville. I love that movie. And Herman USA. Yeah,
she was definitely a weird one in this movie. She like aggressively chopped up vegetables, right? So up next is Harv. Oh, I got a good one. Harv Presno, and he played Wade Gustafson. He's been in Paint Your Wagon, Saving Private Ryan, and The Unsinkable Molly Brown.
Yep. And we also have Tony Denman, who played Scotty Lundegaard. And he's been in movies like Sorority Boys, Go, and Madhouse Mecca.
Up next is Steve Reeves. He played Shep Proudfoot. He's been in The Longest Yard, The Missing, and Dances with Wolves.
And then we also have the amazing John Carroll Lynch, who played Norm Gunderson. And he's been in things like The Founder, Gothica, Paul, and he's also been in a lot of the seasons of the American Horror Story, which I have discussed at length on guesting on another podcast. So,
and finally, we have Steve Park, who played Mike Yanagit. Oh, hold on, I got it. I can do this. I can read. It's only consonants and vowels, right?
Yep.
Yanagita. He played Mike Yanagita, and he's been in Falling Down, The French Dispatch, and Do the Right Thing. And even though he's a smaller character, like you have to go deep into IMDb to find his name and the character he played. But I had to put him on this list because he had one of the most impactful scenes in the movie.
Yeah, one of the most like memorable for
yeah. I was like,
for just a conversation scene.
right. So tell us about who directed the movie.
Well, this movie has been directed by Joel Cohen and Ethan Cohen, uncredited. So is Ethan uncredited on this one?
Ethan is uncredited.
Gotcha. That's kind of odd to me because, I don't know. We all know the Coen brothers.
Well, the thing is that it's odd because if you're brothers, you can have co-directed credits. Like there are very specific rules in Hollywood on who can director and co-director. So they only allow one director unless you're, I guess, husband and wife, but I've never seen a husband and wife team, or if you're brothers. So that's why you have the Wachowski siblings, and that's why you have, they could have had shared director credit, but they didn't.
Okay. Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fun facts. But they have directed other brilliant movies like No Country for Old Men, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, which is one of my personal top favorites, and The Big Lebowski, another classic most folks love.
I still need to see The Big Lebowski. I've seen many of their films, but I haven't seen that one. And the funny thing about it is, like, I come out of movies like No Country for Old Men not fully understanding the movie, yet still enjoying it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's because the acting in that movie is so impactful. They know how to choose their actors, and the acting just kind of hits you over the head. And then there was another one. I don't think they directed it. It was, what was the one where Daniel Day-Lewis, and he was an oil man?
There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, There Will Be Blood. That feels like a Coen movie, but I don't think they did that one. Yeah.
I don't think so either, but yeah, that was, and I watched those two movies around the same time, and I'm kind of one of those where I felt like the titles should have been switched.
Right.
But both were very, very good.
Absolutely. So this movie was written by Joe Cohen and Ethan Cohen, the aforementioned Coen brothers. They've written a lot of great movies together. So they've also written Miller's Crossing, Raising Arizona, and Barton Fink. I've heard people talk about Barton Fink. I actually haven't seen any of these, but I've heard people talk about Barton Fink a lot. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to check that one out.
The only one off of that list right there that I've seen is Raising Arizona, because it's Nicolas Cage. And it's one of my favorite movies. It was one of my dad's favorite movies. And so I still have a copy on DVD. And I love it. It's one of my top Nick flicks of all time.
Nick flicks, I like that.
Nick flicks, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's seen Raising Arizona except me. It's probably one of his best movies. It's probably something that he got Oscar nominated for. But
I don't think so, because I think it was really only Leaving Las Vegas is the one he's only ever been. Maybe he won.
Yeah, he won
right?
for that one.
Yeah, I don't know that he's been. I can't think. I'm just going to stop talking since I don't remember.
It's always a good choice.
Yeah, exactly. But he should have been if he wasn't.
Right. So what's the music like?
So the music is by Carter Burwell, who's done. He's done Carol, True Grit, Hail Caesar, 112 credits to his name. So very. I didn't know that. I unfortunately don't pay a whole heck of a lot to music per se, but it's not to diminish that its importance to the storytelling at all. But yeah, I usually don't pick up on music producers' names or anything like that. So that's a good bit of info to have.
Right. It was the music was good. It wasn't distracting. I didn't really notice it in this viewing, but full disclosure, I was super tired when I watched this movie. I watched it last night, and I made the mistake of playing video games before I watched the movie, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's super late," and I forgot I need to watch this movie. So, I watched the movie dead tired, so I didn't really notice the music, but it wasn't bad or distracting. It was
right.
It was fairly good, and these composers tend to have like hundreds of movies to their name. They work on so many projects, and a lot of the projects they worked on, they're uncredited. So he's doing good work, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If he keeps getting work, he must be doing good work.
Exactly.
Usually, you don't really notice the music unless you're doing something like a huge adventure movie, like a Star Wars or Indiana Jones, something that you can hum along with as you watch the movie, right?
Yeah,
That's when you really notice it. But in this one, it was just part of the background, just designed to draw you in and not take your attention off of what was going on.
Yep, absolutely. And that's it. Yeah, did all those things.
Right. So that's it for the opening credits. And if you're enjoying the show, remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our website, backlookcinema.com/shop. Autumn is coming up. So if you're in need of some new gear for the school season or for the fall, then you can check it out. And so upcoming next, we're going to talk about our favorite parts. And we're back. We're going to talk about our favorite parts of the movie. And like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. I wasn't able to take a whole lot of notes because most of the things that I like about the movie is just how the people were acting. Just the acting in the movie was all my favorite part because they all feel so strange. And at the same time, they're all so normal, right? It was like hyper normal people just doing, okay, I'm going to fix breakfast and I'm going to go up and see this murder up here. So, you sure you don't want to eat breakfast? Like, no, I don't need to eat breakfast. Like, you need to eat breakfast. Like, all right, I'll have some eggs. And then she comes back and I need a jump, right?
Yep.
It's just so regular, right? It was supposed to be a comedy. It was more like just, what if regular people were doing regular jobs? Because it's like,
exactly,
when you're watching movies, everything is it was stylized for our entertainment, right? Nobody stutters, nobody makes mistakes, nobody trips and falls as they're walking. This is like totally on purpose. But here it's like, it feels super ordinary. And that's one of the things that I really appreciated. It was like, yeah, I feel like I'm being seen.
Mm-hmm.
So what were some of your favorite parts?
Oh my God. All of it. I love this movie. And I'm really glad that we got to cover it for your podcast because I haven't watched this movie in years. And so when I was kind of doing my research, well, first of all, I checked it out from the library because I do get a little, because we pay for a lot of streaming services, I get a little cheap when it comes to streaming rentals. And so since I'm already paying enough to the streaming gods, I'm not going to pay another $4. So I checked it out from the library. It cuts into my shopping habit. No.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I checked it out from the library, and then I was down in the pod basement down here one day, just kind of dinking around. I looked up on my DVD shelf, and there it was. And I was like, oh, I forgot I own it. So
right.
I was like, so it's been that long. And I forgot that this movie came out in 1996. And so even watching it, I was like, this still doesn't feel like 1996. This could still be Minnesota today. It could be anywhere in the Midwest today.
Right. Well, there are some things. I'm pretty sure that most people would have cell phones. And
right, yeah.
No, I didn't see one cell phone in the whole movie. And the cars would be newer. Like that. Excuse me. If it were today.
But it's also like small town Midwest, so it's not out of the. I'm surprised at the lack of trucks.
Yeah,
As someone living in small town Midwest, there's a lot more trucks than that.
You would see more trucks, and there would be at least one Telsa.
Yeah, at least. So some of my top favorite scenes are, so after they have kidnapped the wife Jean and they get her up to the lake house and she gets out of the car and she tries to run away, but she's got the bag on her head and she can't go anywhere. She just looks like a distressed chicken.
Yeah.
It cracks me up every single time. And then Steve Buscemi's character is just standing there laughing at it, just watching it all happen. And it's like, there are terrible things that happen in this movie, but it is so funny.
Right. And in a different comedy, they would have chased after her. But in this movie, they just let her run. It's like, where's she gonna go? She doesn't know where she's at. She's got her bag over her head. Her hands are tied behind her back, and she's running around in the snow in almost no clothing, right?
Yep.
And she's running around in the night clothes that we kidnapped her in. So she's not. They just looked at her.
But I love just the way the actress kind of like moves her body and in the way that she moves her head. Again, like I said, it just kind of looks like a distressed chicken. And so that's definitely one of my favorite moments. My other one that just had me laughing the entire time is when the one like deputy goes to talk to the one guy who's like out supposed to be shoveling his driveway, but he's actually sweeping it because everything's like melting or whatever. So that's just kind of funny in of itself. Because I've swept the driveway as well. But the way he is talking about, that funny looking fella, and he keeps talking about up at the lake there, and and that whole exchange and the way that ends, and he's like, and I was telling my wife about it, and she said, oh, you better call it in. So I called it in. And that's the end of his story. And I was like, that is the most Midwest storytelling.
Right. It was that.
So,
and it was like, yeah. And he, because the funny looking guy kept asking him about the ladies. Like, well, this ain't that kind of establishment, mister.
Yep. Like just a little bit too much information about their whole exchange. And it feels very Midwest. I know I've done it. I have family members where I'm just like, they're talking and I'm like, oh my God, get to the point. I don't need to know what Joe Bob said when you saw him at the local grocery store.
Right.
So that's definitely one of my favorite scenes. And then I really, this time around, had just had a greater appreciation for those scenes with Marge and Norm, because it's so, like you said, normal, and it's almost like boring, but like in a very, very sweet way. Like this is their life, but and there's not a lot of conversation between the two of them, and that's okay. Because they're still there for each other. He still brings her lunch. She's supportive of his painting and his artwork and everything, getting on the 3-cent stamps and how important the 3-cent stamps are to people.
Right.
I loved it so much.
Right.
Those two did such a great job of just kind of being your Midwest married couple.
Right. Well, not only that, but it's like you mentioned how they didn't talk much to each other, and they didn't have to, because that's an indication that they've been together for such a long time. It's like when you're together for a long time, it's not a lot of conversation. Like, you go to work, you come home, they go to work and they come home, and you basically know what they did, and you kind of try to have a little bit of a conversation about how your day went, and then you just sit and watch television, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when they're at the buffet having lunch, like they're the couple that sits next to each other.
Right,
that is so cute. Because then she's like, she does not want to sit next to Mike.
Right.
And then she's like, well, I don't want to have to keep turning my head to talk to you, which was the very like classic kind of Midwest nice passive aggression there, which is another thing I just kind of love throughout this whole movie is the Midwest nice with that dash of passive aggression that is the cousin to Midwest nice.
Right. Yeah, she was super nice. It was amazing how nice she was about getting him away from her. Because he was he was putting his arm around her and whatnot, and he seemed kind of desperate. So it was like, oh yeah, you sit over there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pick those as like my top 3, but I love Norm as the husband. The license plate joke was hilarious. I mean, this whole movie is just, like you said, there's a reason why this is held up on such a high pedestal in the movie world.
So yeah, one of my the moments that struck me hard was after the kidnapping and the driving in the snow, and they got the encounter of the police officer was one thing, and then they kill actually it's just Gar kills the police officer, right? Because the police officer is asking too many questions, and he had the opportunity, and so now they're trying to drag the body of the police. He could have helped if he had helped dragged the police officer, they would have gotten out of the way like real quick. And he's bigger anyway, but he's just so over it at the, he's at a point in his life where he's just not there anymore. Let's just get the money and go type of dude. So he has, I guess he feels like, well, I'm the one who did the murder, so you can do the cleanup. That's how he feels. So his partner, Carl, is struggling with his body. This dead police body is bigger than he is. And then they get caught by the passersby. So, Gar gets right into action, gets in the car. He gets in the driver's seat, does a U-turn, chases them down. And the whole thing when the other car and the driver and the passenger from the other car, when they see what's going on and they're looking each other in the eye, I'm like, oh my God, that's not going to end well. It's like, it's just haunting. Right. And then when he catches up to him and he just coldly murders him, and like super cold, right?
Oh yeah.
And almost like it's just like he was taking out the garbage or he was shopping for groceries. Basically, it was just a chore to him. And that people like that are among us is really creepy, right?
Yes. 100%, absolutely.
Super impactful. So how did you feel about the accent? Did they get to you after a while? Because some of it was super harsh.
Well, I have lived my entire life in the Midwest. So I grew up in Iowa. I now live in Wisconsin. So I am very familiar with the accent from these here parts, So I thought they did a really good job with the accents, and really nailing that Wisconsin. Oh, no, not Wisconsin. I'm sorry. That Minnesota nice. With the oh yes and don't you knows and everything. So I get such a kick out of it, and I love that they worked really hard to try and get the accent down as well as they did.
Yes, they did.
And there's just kind of something that's maybe because of the association of Midwest nice to that kind of Minnesotan accent, where it seems like it's so unassuming.
Right.
You got all these knows, and even with Jerry's character, you kind of get the sense that he's just kind of bungling, he's kind of a fool, and you don't really kind of pick up on that he might have a touch of psychopathy in him because of all his oh yeahs and don't you knows, and just kind of that nice guy sound, or the nice cop sound with Marge. So I thought that's a very interesting choice to set this story in a place that's got such a very specific like dialect accent to it.
Right.
That like I said, I associate it with just that Midwest nice. So you don't, because you've got your crime movies and, they might have like an East Coast accent or a Southern accent or something. So you don't really see those types of characters on screen with the knows and oh my gosh and oh yeah, you don't say.
Right.
So I loved it. I thought they did a great job.
I'm glad you could authenticate the accent. I actually shot a message to before the podcast started. I sent a message on Twitter to we just did an ad for Made for TV podcast. So the hosts on that show, I think they're from Minnesota, and they do have a noticeable Midwestern accent. So I asked them if that accent was real, but or if it sounded authentic to them. But I sent it late, so that they wouldn't be able to answer like right away. But I'm still curious. I'll find out after the show. But you're from the Midwest, so to you it sounded real.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. See, there you go again.
And it's like growing up in Iowa has, it's a bit different. It's not so much of a pronounced with the oh yeahs, but there's a touch of that in there. So when I first moved to Wisconsin, there was all these little things. Like, first of all, Wisconsin, as a normal person would pronounce it, is actually pronounced Wisconsin. Here in Wisconsin.
Right.
And then after I moved here, a friend of mine told me that he could tell that I was not a lifelong Wisconsinite because of how I pronounced Milwaukee. I pronounce the L in Milwaukee because there's a freaking L in the word.
Right.
And he's like, nope, lifelong Wisconsinites pronounce it Milwaukee. So I am very hyper aware of how anyone pronounces the city's name.
Right.
And it's so fascinating because it's true.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I love it. And these little difference. So yeah, when I first moved to Wisconsin, I kind of chuckled at everybody, but I've been here like 20 years.
Yeah.
And
it grows on you.
It grows on you, and it kind of just gets in there, and you don't realize that you're doing it until you go home and someone calls you out on it.
Absolutely. So speaking of Jerry, he had some extremely creepy moments. So one of the moments I remember was when he was rehearsing how he was going to tell I guess he was calling his father-in-law.
Yes.
To tell his father-in-law about the murder and how he's rehearsing his grief before he talked to him. I was like, oh my God, this dude is horrible. He can't even manufacture real grief. This is his wife who's in real danger. And he's working on pretending to be grieving. I was like, at least he's practicing, but I was like, oh my God, it's so hard. And it's like well, actually, I know why. He called his father-in-law because he's pretending that he's been contacted by the kidnappers and that they don't want police involvement. So naturally, his father-in-law has the money to free her. So that was his whole performance is crazy. Like you said, because of his accent, because of his mannerisms and his his jerky movements and the stutter and his doodling, he comes off as being unassuming. Like, no, I'm not a criminal at all, but he's kind of a slime ball. It's like the way he sells his cars, trying to upcharge the prospect buyers, or how he's trying to just throw people off as to, like, there's this thing with the person, I guess, who's auditing the cars. I didn't fully understand that part, but the guy kept calling about the VIN numbers for the cars because he gave a couple of cars away to the criminals who were supposed to be committing this crime. So so they're trying to, I guess it's the auditor, he's trying to find these cars. Like, yeah, I'm gonna send you the VIN number right over. And but it's like his facades, after a while, it starts to break down. It's like, it's working less, right?
Yes. You can see the cracks forming because it's not a very structurally sound.
Right. He's like, well, I can't read it because you faxed it. It's like, you're going to have to, well, I'll send somebody over. It's like, okay. And then he kept saying, yeah, I'm going to fax it. He was like, no, you can't fax it to me because you can't read the fax. You have to send somebody over with the copy. I'm going to call my attorney on all this kind of things. And I guess it's like he would owe $130,000 or something like that. So it seemed like he had a whole bunch of cricket stuff going on simultaneously.
Yeah, because they don't go into too much specifics as to why he needs this money and why he has manufactured this whole plot to have his wife kidnapped and then get the ransom from his father-in-law. But through these conversations with the guy on the other end, you get the sense that, yeah, it's some sort of like just theft, embezzlement, lying about VIN numbers that don't actually, for vehicles that don't actually exist. Because at one point the guy's like, oh yeah, I just want to make sure these cars exist, and Jerry right away is like, oh no, they exist, they're real. And you're just kind of like, why would you need to clarify that if you're innocent? So and it's funny because I've never really truly picked up on the specifics of what Jerry got himself into, because while it's the reason why he goes down this path, it's the path and the story that's being told and not so much how we got there. But so that's what I was able to pick up on my rewatch. So I'm like, okay, so it's some sort of, just theft, embezzlement, just kind of your basic like crimes or whatever. So I was just like, it clearly isn't important because everything just goes to crap like immediately afterwards. And that's where the entertainment is.
Well, I think what I picked up on, I think the embezzlement was part of him trying to get money for the deal. So he wanted money from his father to buy this land for a parking lot. That was the whole impetus of him getting the money. That's why when his father-in-law was serious about giving him money, or at least he got the impression that his father-in-law was going to give him money for the parking lot, then he tried to go and contact the kidnappers to tell them that they did not have to kidnap his wife anymore, because now he got the money from his father-in-law that he felt that he couldn't ask for. Now he realized, oh, all I had to do was ask. So now he's going back. And then later on, his father-in-law and his business partner kind of double crosses him on the deal. It's like, no, we're going to give you a finder's fee for this property. We're going to buy it for our own use, and we'll just give you a little bit of money. And it's like, no, I need more. But then it feels like he still needs more money. So for something else. So we don't exactly know everything that he's entangled in. Right.
And I kind of got the sense that the whole line about needing the money for the parking lot that he gave to his father and his father's business partner was all a bunch of crap, because it was just whatever line, business deal, proposal he could come up with to present to them in order to get the money. Because once they kind of were like, well, we'll go in, we'll pay you the finder's fee. You know, we thought this was an investment deal. And Jerry starts to get visibly befuddled. And he's like, no, I need the money. This is for me. And they're just like, you're going to cut us out of this deal. No dice. We're going to go ahead and go in on it. So just from that exchange alone made me feel like that the business proposal Jerry set forth to his dad or his father-in-law was all crap.
Right.
And was just that. So I don't think there was a lot. But who knows? Because like we said, they don't really go into detail as to what all Jerry got entangled in, but you get the sense that it's a naughty mess.
Right. Well, I think they found a lot because his business partner looked over and was like, "Oh, this is a good deal. What's your findings?" So they found the property that he wanted to buy, but maybe he never intended to buy it. Right? He just he wanted the money for something else, and he never intended to buy the property. We don't. Jerry was super slimy. We don't know what he was involved in, but William H. Macy, he basically carried that well. But it was that, and then it was his whole like trying to make everything like it was normal after his wife was kidnapped, and he tried to reassure his son about that everything was going to be okay. He's just super creepy in all of the things that he was doing. So,
well, and then it's like he doesn't even think about his kid throughout any of this, because at one point, one of the guys, Wade's business partner, Stan, I think, was like, "Oh, and what about Scotty?" Then all of a sudden you see it on Jerry's face. Oh, crap, I have a kid.
Right.
And then with the way the movie ends and Jerry goes on the run and everything, it's like, where is Scotty? Who'd you leave Scotty with? Holy crap.
Yeah, at that point, he's only concerned about himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed the movie. Like at the end of the movie, you had Marge basically tracking down the criminals, and she knows she's looking for a car. She finds the car she's looking for, and then she runs into Gar and putting a body in a wood chipper. That was just crazy, just mad crazy. And then like it was like a slice of life moment where she's trying to tell him, like, police, put your hands up or whatever. But he can't hear her because he's right by the wood chipper, right?
Yeah. I love that part too. It cracks me up where she's like, police.
Right.
It's like, honey, you see the wood chipper, you hear the wood chipper.
Right. So the only part that I kind of bumped up against is that she shot him in the back as he was running away. And I was like, well, that wouldn't play well today, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of understand. Like, it would have played better. Like, if they shot her today, then he would have started moving towards her, or she would have shot him as soon as he threw the piece of wood, right? Because he almost hit her. So in that, it was like, you're reflexive, you would shoot the dude, and that would make sense. But not when he's running away, right? At that point, he's like, well, he's wearing this, that, and the other, and he went in that direction, and she knew she had backup coming, but like shooting him in the back, that was kind of harsh.
Yeah.
From today's standard, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. But, no, I agree. I was kind of feeling that too when I was watching it. I was like,
right.
Well, but within the context of this movie, 1996, I mean, this guy has done terror. He's just feeding his partner to a wood chipper.
Right.
But no, I agree. And it's just kind of interesting because it makes you, I was reading, I think on IMDb about how Marge would have had to been like a really amazing shot to be able to hit him in the leg from that distance, because he got pretty far.
Yeah. With that distance with the pistol. She wasn't aiming for his leg. She was
right. She wasn't aiming. That's what she hit. But
right. That was because the first shot missed. And that's what they teach, and whenever you're in a job where you're dealing with firearms and you are called upon to shoot people, they always tell you to aim for the center of the body because that's the part of the body that's moving the least, right? You're not trained to shoot somebody in the head or in the legs. You're trained to shoot them in the center part. They call it the center mass because that's the part that's doing the least amount of movement. So she was most likely aiming for his back and it ended up in his leg. And she kind of lucked out that she didn't kill him.
Yeah. So we get the justice in the sense that she catches him, she takes him in, and you fingers crossed everything works out as it should. Right. So, but yeah, I just couldn't help but think like, oh yeah, that's a Midwest girl for you. She can hit her target from the shoreline.
Right.
But yeah, it was, and I couldn't help but wonder too how the big Swede, like, yeah, he's out there with the wood chipper and everything, but you still don't have any other kind of weapon on you. You know what I mean? It's like this ruthless, very cold, unhinged kind of character when you're feeding people to a wood chipper. I'm sorry I keep laughing about that.
You're supposed to laugh about
silly.
that.
I know.
That's what it was for. That's why they call it a dark comedy. Because that was a funny moment. And he's struggling with that too, because wood chipper is not meant to cut up bones and flesh. It's meant to cut up wood, right? So it can do it, but it's not, not what it's designed for. So yeah, he's struggling with shoving the rest of his partner's leg into the wood chipper when he gets caught. And it's just painting the forest with his partner's blood. Like, was he going to do anything with that blood? He could have just as easily chopped up the body and hit it somewhere. That's what most people do. And the body was already chopped up, so half of the work was done. What was the point of feeding it to a wood chipper? It's labor intensive. It takes up too much time. It's
very noisy.
Right, very noisy. Attracting. I know you're in the middle of nowhere, but it was, I guess that's why he felt like he could do that, because he was in the middle of nowhere. And what did he think that the snow would eventually cover up all the blood that he was spewing into the forest or the backyard? I don't know.
I just don't think that character has a lot of forethought. It's very much like in the moment kind of, I need to take care of this situation. Right. I need to shoot the cop and these passerbyers, and now I need to feed my former partner into a wood chipper. All these things make sense too.
Not only that, but he kills the hostage. It's like, what?
Because she starts, and that was the other thing too. So yeah, that one, Big Swede is definitely he's obviously like the bad guy. He's the unhinged one, the one that has no problem doing these terrible things. He's the obvious bad guy, but I don't know. Jerry's kind of up there with him because of that unassuming nature. So it's interesting how we just have a group of baddies and Marge.
Right. She goes up against all of them. Actually, I think that Steve's character was probably the most dangerous one, even because he has the forethought, he does the planning, and then he is able to act when it becomes necessary. Like he doesn't hesitate to kill people. Like he didn't hesitate to kill the father-in-law. He doesn't hesitate to kill the guard at the parking lot booth. He's already annoyed with people who don't let him out of a parking garage. So the second time that happens is like he doesn't hesitate to kill that person. But he was pretty gnarly too. And then he had to challenge he had to challenge Gar because Gar wanted to keep more money. Oh, another thing, there's almost $1 million. Well, let's say they only took like $80,000. So there's almost $1 million buried somewhere in the field. I don't know why I think he was going to come back to get it later.
I think so too.
That's the only thing that makes sense. He was going to come back and get it later and then leave town. And I don't think he had any intention of paying the dude, right? So he just puts like a car scraper in the middle of nowhere, and that's supposed to tell him like, what if it snows? Like if it snows, you're never going to find that car scraper. If it anything could happen, right?
Exactly.
It's never going to find that money again. Somebody will find it, but he's dead. It doesn't matter. But that kind of struck me as like, this seems like a really dumb decision. Like you could have did something else. Everything struck me as doing something else instead of burying it in a field in the middle of nowhere.
Well, even like off a highway like that, there are mile markers. So
Yes.
you know, and it's like you couldn't have like gone a few feet and found the mile marker.
A mile marker, a sign,
Anything.
you know, not really a store. You don't want it too much where people are traveling, but yeah, something like that. A road sign, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. County Highway A or something.
Right. He's the worst pirate ever.
It's
Yeah,
the
pirates
worst.
bury their treasure, and he's the worst pirate ever.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Were there any other favorite parts that you wanted to go over?
Oh man. I mean, I also had written down when Jerry's walking around rehearsing his call to Wade, because that was it just made me kind of chuckle, but then it's also like that kind of terrifying, like here he is practicing and he can't get it right. He doesn't know, he can't get himself to sound genuine in any way, even though he's the one that put this all together. So I feel like his mastermind skills are definitely not up to par.
I think all of us normal people would struggle with what exactly is the right kind of grief when you suspect that your partner has been kidnapped. Like he was trying to muster, like he didn't want to do too much because she's not dead, right? He doesn't think that she's dead, so not too much, but not so soft that he doesn't care. So he was trying to find the right tone, I think.
Yeah. Well, and especially with his father-in-law who already kind of hates him, you know, it's like you don't want to oversell it, but you can't undersell it because this man is going to pick it apart regardless. So I did think that was really interesting. And let's see what else. I mean, when Marge is interviewing the two girls at the bar and just that whole very Minnesotan, back and forth.
Yeah. That's why this movie is set in Minnesota. That's what
I love it.
Exactly what they were going for when they did this.
Yeah, I love it. And then the one other thing too is, you know, so Marge is pregnant and so she's like always eating, and I can appreciate a character that is eating, especially on screen and stuff. But, you know, Norm brings her lunch from Arby's and she's mowing it down. And I just chuckled to myself because when I was pregnant with my first child, I ate so much Arby's, like all the Arby's. There's just something about that weird roast beef. I couldn't, and the curly fries, could not get enough of it. So that part just kind of made me chuckle. And then she stops at Hardee's and gets a breakfast sandwich, and Hardee's has really good breakfast sandwich. So I was like, relatable.
Right.
So let's see. I mean, Frances McDormand as Marge is just amazing. I think she also comes across as kind of unassuming again with the oh yeahs and don't you knows. But the second that she's challenged either by Jerry or she's put in an uncomfortable situation like by Mike, you can see she's able to turn it on. So she is a very, very competent police chief because she's the chief. She's not just a deputy or anything like that. So she is the woman in charge. And I love that. And the way that they first come up to the scene from the police shooting and the bystanders or the passerbyers. And the way that she's able to just also quickly kind of put it together. Because you kind of always get this sense in movies and shows that, small town cops, they're just kind of like your, oh crap, what was that? I had like a really old TV show I was going to throw out as a reference, and now I can't think of it.
Like, not Barney Miller.
Barney Fife?
I know. Yeah, Andy Griffin.
Andy Griffin. Thank you. Sorry. But yeah, so you kind of get this so she kind of, I like how she, in a way, like kind of squashes that trope of small town cops that don't really know anything. And especially being a woman and a pregnant woman and a chief, as she just freaking kills it. She does. And she's clearly knows what she's doing. She's clearly earned her spot as the chief because of the way she so quickly puts it all together. And even when she's talking to her partner or whatever, when they're driving back, and she's like, I don't know, something about like his police work wasn't quite up to par. The way she so nicely was like, you're wrong.
Right. Yeah. What happened was he was talking about the license plate. He's like, all he wrote down was DLP. And she was like, I don't think your police work is up there.
Yep, that's it.
DLP, dealer's license plates.
DLR, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So she did such a great job. Frances McDormand she's a gift. She also does the voice of God in the Good Omens television series. So I think it's appropriate. I
meant to watch that. I watched the first episode like months ago and I haven't finished watching the series.
I can't recommend it enough. I love it. David Tennant and Michael Sheen, those two are just adorable together. So,
right.
But yeah, Frances McDormand I love her so much. I think she does such a great job in this role for just something, for kind of like a normal person, like a normal character.
Right.
So love it.
She did it. All right. So let us take a break right here. And then when you hear us up next, we will be talking about the trivia. All right, we're back with some fresh and ripe trivia from IMDb, the source of a lot of knowledge. Not the source of all knowledge, mind you, just a gobsmacking amount of knowledge. So just to get us started off, we'll talk about Joe Cohen had Frances McDormand and John Carroll Lynch conceive of a backstory for the characters to get the feel for them. They decided that Norm and Marge met while they were working on the police force, and when they got married, they chose that one of them had to quit. Since Marge was the better officer, Norm quit and took up painting. Isn't that sweet?
I love that so much, and I kind of wonder if that helps make their characters feel so real in that boring, sweet married life. So I love it. And also 1996, Norm is the stay-at-home husband, stay-at-home partner. He gets up to make eggs for her because she needs to have eggs. She needs to have a breakfast. And I just kind of loved that little bit of representation in 1996 of seeing the male being the stay at home, right, and kind of admitting that, when we read this bit of trivia, that she was the better cop and he has no ego problems with that. And so he focuses on his paintings and it makes it onto a stamp. I love them so much.
Right. And it's like he wanted to stay home anyway. He wanted to stay home to make paintings anyway. Like that was probably his passion. And it's like, well, this gives me an opportunity to work on the thing that I'm truly passionate about anyway.
Exactly. And how supportive they are of each other.
Right. Absolutely. So we all want a relationship like that.
Yes. I think there's a lot in their few limited scenes together and dialogue, but all right. So another little bit of trivia. I love this one too. The snowplow that drives past the motel at the end of the film was not part of the script. Signs in the area warned motorists not to drive through due to filming, but a state employee ignored them. As a former state employee, yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, I don't care about your fancy Hollywood thing over here.
I got a job to do. I got 14 more rural routes to hit. I cannot wait all day.
Right. The actors used the book called How to Talk Minnesotan to help them with their accents, which I thought was crazy.
I love that. I love that they just, the work that they put into the accent. I much appreciated.
Right.
William H. Macy begged the directors for the role of Jerry Lindegaard. He did 2 readings for the part and became convinced he was the best man for the role. When the Coens, Joel and Ethan, didn't get back to him, he flew to New York where they were starting production and said, "I'm very, very worried that you are going to screw up this movie by giving this role to somebody else. It's my role and I'll shoot your dogs if you don't give it to me." He was joking, of course. So he was born to play this role. This is like the William H. Macy role.
Yeah, he definitely brought his A game, and he really wanted this role. Like, he spent his own money to buy an airline ticket to go out to where they are. He's like, I'm very worried that you're going to give this part to somebody else. So this is awesome. That was pretty awesome. I feel like he was channeling the character that he felt that he was made for.
I think a little bit, yeah.
When when Carl Showalter, Steve Buscemi character, calls Larry London guard William H. Macy for the deal to be done, he tells him 30 minutes and we'll wrap this up. From that moment, the film's running time left is exactly 30 minutes. That's pretty brilliant. That's brilliant editing on their part.
I love it when movies do that, when there's like, they mention a time and then it's exactly that amount of time. It's so fun.
You know what that reminds me of? They don't mention a time. You kind of have to know it by studying the movie, but From Dusk Till Dawn is like that. So they're really two completely different movies. You have the first half of the movie, which is a crime drama, and exactly the halfway point it switches from a crime drama to a horror story. So yeah, it's amazing when you can do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. William H. Macy stated in an interview that despite evidence to the contrary, he did hardly any ad-libbing at all. Most of the characters' stuttering mannerisms were written in the script exactly the way he does them in the film. And I just think that just goes to show the brilliant writing in creating this character from the Coen brothers.
Right. I imagine like when they write a script, they're just writing out words and they're just going to let the actors interpret it whichever way. But yeah, they were very meticulous in how they wanted this movie to go. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's amazing when you can get down in the details like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
The scene where the couple tries to make a deal with Jerry is based on Ethan Coen's real life encounter with the car salesman. It's almost a verbatim transcript of my experience. He's like, you called me down here and you said the deal was done. And now you're a liar, right?
Oh, I love that so much because I feel like anyone that's gone through a dealership or anything knows exactly what that is like, whether it's the undercoating sealant, which, come on, you're in the Midwest, you need it because the salt is going to rust out the bottom of your vehicle. It sounds like a bunch of crap, but unless you are meticulous about washing the underbelly of your vehicle, as soon as the snow and salt start to disappear, you're going to need it. Sorry, that's my Midwest rant. Vehicle maintenance.
But that's under. I think the clear coat was for the paint, though. So it's not something that right. That's not something that you would put under your car. So you're going to get in trouble with the salt anyway. It's not something that you could help. So he was trying to get them to buy the covering on the paint, and so finally he said, "Well, okay, I'll take $200 off."
Gotcha.
No, he took $100 off because they already put the paint, the clear coat on the cars. It comes with the clear coat, so it's not like they could, they're trying to sell something that's already on the car, right?
Mm-hmm. And then the way he tells the next prospective buyer, like, "Oh yeah, you don't need that," and you're like, "Dude, you're just full of it. You'll just tell anybody anything."
Well, the guy was very assertive. Like he didn't feel confident that he could sell this particular guy on the clear coat because the guy very much said, "I don't need no clear coat," and the guy said, "Oh yeah, I guess you don't need." Right? He immediately folds.
Yeah. Oh, Jerry.
Right. So the scene where the couple. Did I read that? Yeah, I read that. It's your turn. My bad.
Yeah, that's okay. The Coens have described Minnesota as Siberia with family restaurants. I love that.
Seems about right. Yeah, it's white up there.
Yes. Yeah. And I love a good family restaurant as a personal note.
Right.
We hit them up wherever we go.
Right. I've been to a couple of family restaurants up there, so yeah, they're pretty nice. When working on her Minnesota accent for the film, Frances McDormand worked with Larissa Cockernot. She played hooker number 1. McDormand referred to her accent and mannerisms as Minnesota nice. Because of course they are.
Of course. Oh yeah,
Right.
Frances McDormand, looking around for a role as a killer or prostitute, was hesitant to play a pregnant cop. When I started working on it, I realized it was one of the best gifts that I've ever been given.
Well,
and in turn, she gave us an amazing gift.
Absolutely. But what trips me out is that she was looking for a killer or a prostitute. So I was like, wow, that's
a far cry.
Right. A far cry from an unassuming police chief.
Yep.
Approaching Brainerd from the south, you see a statue of Paul Bunyan with a sign reading, "Welcome to Brainerd." In reality, Brainerd has no such statue. Paul Bunyan Amusement Park, located just outside of Brainerd, had a huge statue of Bunyan and Babe, the blue ox. The park is now at this old farm between Brainerd and Garrison. So it's somewhere in the area, but it's not at the entrance of Brainerd as depicted in the movie.
Mm-mm. And one of the places, I think one of the like family restaurants up in the Dells has a Paul Bunyan and Babe Blue Ox. So
Right.
I don't know that it's maybe as big as the one that was depicted in the movie, but he is definitely a symbol that you can kind of see throughout the Midwest, I think. So,
Right.
all right, let's see. I'm going to try real hard with the character name now. Geir Grimsrud, played by Peter Stormare, has 18 lines of dialogue in the entire movie and never says more than a complete sentence at one time. By comparison, Carl Showalter, played by Steve Buscemi, has over 150 lines of dialogue.
Yes. And Steve Buscemi is the type of person that can deliver those lines.
Absolutely. I was watching like the documentary on the DVD, kind of like the making of, and the Coen brothers were saying that, you know, they definitely pictured, you know, this character to be just kind of that motor mouth type, always talking. And they thought Steve was perfect for it. And they're like, in real life, he is not like that at all.
Ah.
So it's just because he does it so well that you kind of get like, oh, you're just an exaggerated version or something, you know, of a little bit of yourself in there. But no, and then even in the documentary, he is definitely not Carl in the way that he was speaking and delivering during the little interview bit. So I love that man. He can do it all.
Right. Like when he's he's basically a character actor. He plays similar characters out. Like with Carl, I see him as the same character as Armageddon. He seems like the same guy. And he talks the same way. It's like just fast, just rapid fire delivery with his speech. And mannerism. So yeah, he's a joy to watch.
Yes.
William H. Macy was doodling between the takes, and the Coens decided to use it for the scene. So that's pretty cute.
I thought so too. They just caught him one day and they're like, oh yeah, let's get that in there. And
Right.
I think it just works so well, especially the scene that they used it in, because at this point, you know, he's under a lot more pressure. And so it does not surprise me that he would be distracted to the point of just doodling on his notepad or something. So I loved it. It's just these little things.
Right.
Even though the movie takes place mostly in Brainerd, Minnesota, the Coen brothers decided to call it Fargo, which is in North Dakota, just because they liked the sound of it for a title better than Brainerd, which was, quote, not cool enough. Fargo is where Jerry Lundegaard meets the two hoods he hires to kidnap his wife.
And they have a whole TV show called Fargo based in the same universe as this movie, but they're not in Fargo. I guess they're in Brainerd the entire time.
Yeah.
I've never seen the TV show, but now I'm interested.
Me too. I did read that right away, because even though it doesn't feature any of these characters, I had read that they do explain kind of, I think real quick, maybe in a passing conversation or something, what happened to that money, that the money was found or something.
Okay.
So I'm like,
Right.
well, now I have to watch it.
Right. Frances McDormand wore a pregnancy pillow filled with birdseed to simulate her pregnant belly. She says that she didn't deliberately try to move in a pregnant, quote, manner. It simply came as a natural response to keeping the extra weight balanced.
Mm-hmm.
It's like wasn't trying, just how it turned out.
And, you know, I thought for the longest time she was pregnant during filming. And I think a lot of that was the movement. So I think it's a very interesting choice to have filled the pregnancy pillow with the birdseed to kind of give it a little bit more of that realism versus just a poofy pillow. So
Right.
Brilliant. It works amazingly. Filming began on January 22nd, 1995, when the region was experiencing its second warmest winter in 100 years. Filming of outdoor scenes had to be moved all over Minnesota, North Dakota, and Canada, and much of the snow was artificial.
Wow, they had global warming was really impactful on trying to make this movie.
Yep.
Like, where's the snow? It's so hard. Dang it.
Yep.
Because it would have
Even
been
that-
so much cheaper if we filmed it like 10 years ago.
Right.
And this movie is timeless. They could have made this movie almost any time period up until today.
Yep. I agree.
The wood chipper used in the movie is now on display at the Fargo Moorhead Visitor Center.
I love it so much. They're displaying a wood chipper.
Right,
It's like putting an excavator on display.
Right. You remember this machine?
I love it.
If it's still painted with the fake blood, then it would be worth it. But
Absolutely.
if it's just like pristine condition wood chipper, I don't know. It's like, yeah, sure, buddy. It was used in a movie, right?
There better be a prosthetic foot with the sock sticking up.
Right. That would make it worth it.
Absolutely. None of the movie scenes, either exterior or interior, were actually filmed in Fargo. The bar exterior shown at the beginning of the movie is located in northeast Minneapolis.
So, wow. That's kind of a shocker and a shame.
Yeah.
Frances McDormand, played by Marge Gunderson, and director Joe Cohen have been married since April 1st, 1984, and they have one child together. So it's nepotism all over again.
Right. Exactly.
I'm surprised she's not in every single Coen Brothers project.
Yeah. But I also feel like Frances is very kind of selective also, and that it's just because it's her husband's movie, if the role isn't right for, and I feel like the Coens are also very selective and not just gonna, toss Frances in there just because, like, unless the role is for her, because I guess they said that I'm not sure how far back prior to them making Fargo, but they already had Frances in mind for that role.
Right. It's not like Sam Raimi, and when he's making movies, where's Bruce? Somebody get Bruce Campbell on the phone. I can't do this movie without Bruce Campbell. Or I forgot his name. The man that directed Guardians of the Galaxy, his brother
James Gunn.
Yeah, James Gunn.
James and Sean Gunn.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sean Gunn is almost every James Gunn movie. But that's cute because it's not like Sean Gunn is in a major part. There's always a minor role. And it's just cute that he's always, it's just a cute thing to do. Or Ron Howard and Clint Howard.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Right.
Aw, they like each other.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 weeks into shooting, Joel Cohen and Ethan Coen revealed to their cast and crew that this was not, in fact, based on the true story. I skipped over you. I'm sorry.
That's
but
all right.
I found out much later on that it wasn't real, and I'm shocked and surprised. It's like, how is this not a true story? Why would you lie to me?
I trusted you, Coen brothers.
Right. I expected like some of the events to be embellished or artistic license or whatever, but no, the whole thing is false.
Yeah, and I love that. I loved how they packaged it and marketed it and everything. And then after the movie had come out and came out to rave reviews, then it was kind of quote discovered that it was not based on a true story. So then the Coen brothers, they sent like your classic apology letter to I think they said the Washington Post or one of the major paper publications, and did the classic we're going to launch a full investigation to find out how this happened. We're so sorry. We can promise nothing but, excellent storytelling and truth or whatnot. I mean, for 1996, and they came out with some late 2000s apology type crap. I was like, I love you guys. You guys are brilliant. Never change.
They knew the
stop.
whole time that it wasn't real. They knew the whole time that they just sat down and wrote the story. But I think they thought it was, from a marketing standpoint, it would have been brilliant. It was what's the idiom? I can't remember exactly what it is. It's like take something and apologize later.
Oh yeah. It's, what is it? It's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yes.
Is it that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what I was thinking of, and that's what they did.
Totally. And I love that because the whole kind of idea behind that is getting seeing if the audience could suspend their disbelief long enough to really buy all the events that have happened. And I just think that is a great like social experiment in of itself.
Right.
Let's tell this little lie and see how it affects the movie watching process.
Right.
I thought it was brilliant. They got me with Fargo. I got with Blair Witch Project as well.
They did the same thing with Blair Witch Project. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I missed it though. I totally missed it. By the time, well, I didn't go and see it right away. And so, I found out, it was said that, it was a movie after all. It wasn't actual found footage. And so now I missed the impact of the movie, right? So now I don't want to watch it anymore.
I understand, because sometimes when those moments are gone, they're gone, and you try as you might, you can't replicate them.
Right.
So.
You can't get that back.
Nope. The first time I watched the Blair Witch Project, it was like a quote bootleg VHS copy. And I don't know if that was maybe part of marketing as well. A buddy came over with it and we watched it, and it was really grainy and everything. And it looked like an illegal copy of this like very forbidden movie.
Right.
And it was kind of spooky, but the way I was not impressed with the ending shot. I was like, what is happening? This is dumb. I was very annoyed by the end.
Right.
But I liked the whole concept of like, oh my God, the witch in the woods. Frances McDormand accidentally left her pregnancy suit in her trailer one night. The silicone breasts in the suit froze and one of them exploded the next day on set. I hope to God she wasn't wearing it.
Well, I don't think it was like explode like kablam. More like explode like, it was like puffed out.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
You can imagine the profanities that happened when her fake breast exploded.
Absolutely. All the jokes, they pretty much write themselves.
Right.
Kristen Rudrud, who played kidnapping victim Jean Lundegaard, was actually born in Fargo, North Dakota. Ah,
there's our Fargo connection.
Yep.
After about 30 minutes into the film, when Gar Grimswood, see, we've been pronouncing this name the entire podcast, and we still having problems.
Yep.
Gary Grimswood chases after the eyewitnesses in the car. He says something in Swedish, which means, and I'm going to swear, there's an E on the podcast. I put it on every podcast, even on the podcast where I don't swear. But this is a particularly vile cursing term for American audiences. American audiences have a particular problem with this term. But I've been watching The Boys, and now it's one of my favorite things to say. I don't say it out loud to people. I'm in my house or in my car. This is what I yell to other drivers when they do something dumb, right? But so he says something in Swedish that means fucking cunt. The actor who portrays Ger, Peter Stormare, is Swedish. So yeah, it came out naturally for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I apologize to the listeners who are very offended by that particular term, but I'm going to confess that I have a ball saying it.
I am one that I am a female that has zero problems with the C word. I'll just censor myself just so we don't go overboard for your listeners.
Right.
I love it. And I find it so interesting, the differences in its use between here and other countries, where it's used as a term of like affection and for your friends. Like I think like in Australia and stuff, and you don't actually call your mate, you call them the C word, but you refer to maybe an acquaintance as a mate or something. I had a friend live in Australia, so she fills me in on all these little tidbits on just kind of these differences and stuff. And I love it. I think language is very interesting. I think it's kind of fascinating, especially with some swears. So
right. Yeah, because even in England, they say it's not as serious a word as it is over here in the U.S. For somehow it was really bad in the U.S.
All the pearl clutching that goes along with its use. Oh
right, absolutely.
William H. Macy came up with the idea to have Jerry rehearse what he's going to say on the phone to Wade Harve Presnell. Very interesting.
Yes. that was a great choice. He did that's one of the best parts of the movie. He did a service to this movie when he did that, because that was so creepy when him doing that. It's like, what are you doing, man? It was like, ugh, it's slimy.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also a bit of that humor, that dark humor in it as well. And it's such an amazing choice. I love it.
Right. And we had touched on this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
In every scene that they have together, Marge and Norm are either lying in bed or eating, right? Just normal, right?
Just normal.
And the very first time you see them, they're lying in bed and then they get up to eat, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like establishing what you're going to see throughout the entire movie.
Yep. And then there's the one scene where they're in bed and he's dozed off and she's still watching TV, but you kind of get the feeling that she's still thinking about the case or whatever. But there's a bag of chips in bed. So they were also snacking in bed, which I don't have a problem with, except for the crumbs.
Yeah.
So that was where my mind instantly went, was like, oh, crumbs.
You just wipe on the floor and vacuum up in the morning.
Exactly. Norm will take care of that after he's made Margie's breakfast.
Right. That's exactly right.
J. Todd Anderson, a storyboard artist who regularly works with the Coen brothers, not on them, that's weird, also plays one of the murder victims, but is credited as a symbol in the credits, similar to the symbol Prince used at the time. This may be a reference to the fact that Prince, like the Coen brothers, was born in Minnesota.
Yes, that's pretty awesome.
I love it.
I didn't even pay attention to the credits, but I thought it was a really nice piece of trivia. What is also nice, I'm glad that you said that he was credited as a symbol instead of trying to read it.
I looked at it and I was like,
going to say it. Yeah. So, for those of you listening, it's a symbol that looks very much like Prince's symbol, if you're familiar with Prince. And for a while, he refused to use his name, and he went by a symbol he used that symbol as a moniker when you this is how he was credited on music videos. This is how he was credited on his album, that he used that symbol. And you can type out Prince's symbol in a similar way, but in this particular instance, it's a capital O, parentheses, a beginning parentheses, a plus sign, and a greater than symbol. And that's how he's credited, I guess, in homage to Prince. So, and I think at the time Prince was going by that symbol. And if you want to see the symbol, you can look on, Prince had a guitar that was shaped like the symbol, right? For a little while. and he had the word slave written on his cheek. So he was going hardcore against the record company at that time.
Mm-hmm. God. Oh God, I miss that man.
Right.
So brilliant.
So that is it for the trivia. I hope you enjoyed that. And now we're going to go to the critics. We're going to pause for like 3 or 4 seconds, and we're going to see what the critics thought. And we're back. So now we're going to see what the critics thought about this movie. The critics gave it, at Rotten Tomatoes, they gave it a 94%. Audience scores was 93%. And on IMDb reviews, one of the highest reviews I've seen on that site is 8 out of 10. And the IMDb reviews tend to be lower because people are afraid to actually give a 10 out of 10 for the movies that they like. They're saving it for something special. So I think a lot of people gave this movie a 10 on that site. And it's well deserved, which at the same time means that it's hard to find critics that didn't like the movie. And when you do find critical reviews that gave it like a Rotten Tomato, they're dumb. They're dumb comments. It's like what you're saying doesn't make any sense. It's like that's not what the movie is about. You're just hating on it just to be hating on it. So let's get started. So Alan Mason from Positive, he wrote, "The spirit of comedy counterbalances the violence of the gangster film and trumps it hands down. Kind ordinariness not a word I'm familiar with. And the wordy story clashed victoriously with the irony of fate that lies in wait for enterprising hearts. So yeah, that's a pretty intellectual way of describing this movie. I kind of like that. And then we have Adam Mars James from the Independent UK, who wrote, in effect, the Coens have written an action film that disregards the basic principles of the genre, that character is expressed in action. Which is kind of a dumb thing to say, since this is not an action movie.
Yeah.
What was he thinking? Yeah, just because you have like police officers and you have crime doesn't necessarily mean that it's an action movie. Was Columbo an action TV series? Was what's her name? Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote. Was she in an action series? No, these are detective shows. These aren't action movies. Come on, calm down. Watch a different. Yeah, watch the movie that you're supposed to be watching. What you're doing is you're projecting.
Sarah Brinks, Gone with the Twins, says the Coens' dialogue is snappy and fun, and they know how to ride the line between serious and funny. Their tendency towards moments of horrific violence doesn't always work for me, but that is one of their signatures, and I can usually get past it.
Yeah. It was some stark violence too. They didn't actually show anything, but the way it kind of comes up, like the only thing that you really see is when what's his name? Hold on, let me get his name real quick, because I don't want to say, well, that guy, because then it would sound weird and insensitive. So when Shep Proudfoot was Steve Reeves, that character, when he comes and he beats up Steve Buscemi, like that was probably the most violent that you actually saw. And then like with the shots, he didn't actually. Oh yeah, that when the police officer got shot, that was pretty harsh too.
And it's like the one with the police officer is kind of, it's right there. It's close up. It's like right in Steve, in Carl's like face and everything. And so it's very jarring in that sense.
Yes.
But I think the scene with Carl and Shep is almost harder to watch because of just the colossal ass whooping that Shep lays on him.
Right.
And then, and the belting,
Yeah,
that one was really, I was kind of a little surprised at myself at how hard that was for me to watch now.
Right.
And never really like thinking too much about it in the past. So I admit I've gotten soft in my old age and becoming a mom and everything. And so I just, maybe it's one of those things, but I was like, oh, that's not good. None of that is good. I don't like this.
So yeah, that was that was impactful. And then there was another one where they didn't actually show it, but when Steve gets in a fight with Steve, not Steve, well, what is his name? I didn't forgot. When the two criminals, when they have a dispute over how they were going to divide up the money, right? So that would be Carl and Gare. So you know, like Gare is just sitting there, I guess, watching TV and eating something, and I don't know, wearing something weird. Like it was like long johns or something.
Yeah.
And then like they're having an argument, and Garrett's not really engaged in the argument. He just says what he wants and he's done. Like he's done talking. He doesn't want to talk to you anymore. And Steve is like, you know, I'm going to take the car, blah, 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 whatever. And then he walks out, and then Garrett just haunts him like with the axe, like just comes up behind him with the axe. And you don't see the strike, but it's like it's like the scene cuts off before you see the strike with it. You feel it. Right? It's like, oh my God, no.
Well, and just the way that scene is shot with Gare coming out of the house and everything, all of a sudden he's got his winter cap on and the axe and his long john. So there's a bit of ridiculousness in the visual itself, but it's also terrifying because Carl doesn't see it right away. And Gar comes out and just hunts him down those few feet or whatever with the axe. So it's like visually funny, but also scary. And but we don't see everything. Like we don't see when he shoots the passenger in the flipped vehicle in the beginning. Right. So it's their use of violence, I think, is very interesting, where they don't always have to show us everything for it to be so impactful.
That's
and
exactly right.
I think a lot of it is still very impactful.
Right. That is exactly right.
All right. And the last one is Dave Kerr from New York Daily News writes, wrote, the camera angles to the set design, everything is calculated to make the viewer feel superior to the cloddish, geeky characters on display. Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, I guess I didn't really feel that way. I thought they were ordinary to the point where you felt like I could do that, right? And I think or I could do that better. But it was supposed to show the ineptitude of some of the characters, especially the criminal characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where that comes from. But everybody else, like, they're just doing their regular stuff, and people aren't used to seeing regular in a movie. They're used to seeing something that's catered to be more fantastical. Even in a regular movie, people are acting a little bit more competent than they do in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but that's what I mean when they're kind of, this was like from one of the negative reviews, and I was like, it seemed kind of forced. It seemed to say something like that to me anyway.
Well, I could see that applying maybe towards Jerry specifically, but not Marge.
Right.
You know, Marge isn't cloddish or geeky, so I wonder if this little blurb if maybe the reviewer Dave was kind of maybe subconsciously talking about that unassuming Midwest accent and making them cloddish and thinking them as cloddish or geeky. So I just mean, I think when you're kind of watching Jerry, you're not supposed to think like, I could have planned this better.
Right.
I could have done this better, but maybe just a little bit because he's so bad at it. He is so bad at it.
Right.
So, but I mean, definitely not with like Marge or anything because she's amazing.
Right.
No.
She like I said, she's Columbo. Her mannerisms forces you to underestimate her, and that's how and she knows this, and that's how she gets like she uses that against Jerry, right? Yep. And you can see when she switches, right?
Mm-hmm. That's that Midwest passive aggression, the cousin to the Midwest nice. So
right. Absolutely. So that's it for what the critics thought. Finally, Fargo is at this recording available for purchase at your favorite streaming service, or it might be available at your local library.
There you go.
That's it for today. Please join us next week where we will watch an early classic starring Michael Keaton, Johnny Dangerously. Follow us on Twitter or TikTok at Backlick Cinema, or Facebook or Instagram at Backlick Cinema Podcast for updates. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions or comments or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. And do you have any additional... Once again, I forget to ask you for your plugs at the beginning of the show. So so give us your plugs at the end of the show. Where can people find you? Where can our listeners find your podcast? Where can they find you on social media? Give us the deets.
Well, I am the most active over there on the Twitters. You can find me at Streaming Bubble, and then you can follow on Facebook and Instagram as My Streaming Bubble. I'm not quite as active there. I'm trying to get a little bit better. And then you can listen to the podcast. We're on a podcast player near you. I'm available on almost all of them, with the exception of one, but that's okay. It's another podcast.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
My Streaming Bubble.
Right. Awesome. One last time, if you like the show, then please help us grow. To do this, you can subscribe on the show, or subscribe to the show, rate us, or write a review on Spotify, podchaser.com, or Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. And I know you've enjoyed our guest, Jen, so please listen to My Streaming Bubble wherever you listen to podcasts. Believe me, it matters. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.